So we'll be covering it from the in a very practical manner. So let us take the case that you want to launch a new product. Okay, so let's take the case that you are a electronic manufacturing company, and further you want to launch a new product and you want to analyze the market. In that particular case, let us take the case that there are 10 lakh people in the state itself, where basically your suggested market it is, there are basically residing 10 lakh people over here. Now these 10 lakh people will be called what? These will be termed as population. Now either way it is that you will be going through each and every people in the market itself, and further we'll be looking at that what are the different scenarios that you can market your product. Okay, so because we will be taking a survey, so it will be the case that we'll be going to each and every person, we'll be covering 10 lakh people, and further we'll be performing the survey, but that would be quite hectic and also a very costlier concern. So we will be doing what? We'll be selecting a small selection, or we can say we'll be selecting a small part of the population itself, and further we'll be conducting the survey over here. Now this small portion or small cut that we have selected out of the population of 10 lakh people, it is said to be what? It is said to be sample. So the process that by which we do select the different entities from the population itself, that is said to be what? That is said to be the sampling. So over there you need to understand the different terms. First of all, it is related to population. So whensoever we are basically concerned related to the mean of the population, it is represented by term mu. It is basically written as mu as such, and its sound is mu. And in case you are basically concerned about the mean of the terms, in that case you'll be basically writing it as x bar over there. So the mean is basically represented in the case of the sample as x bar. In the case of population, it is represented by mu over there. Now what do you mean by the mean over there? Let me give you another example. Let us take the case that there are 50 students in the class. And you want to get the average height. Calculate the average height. That would be related to what? You'll be calculating what? You'll be calculating the mean. That is, if I'm considering this as population, it will be represented by what? It will be represented by mu itself, and it will equal to individual height of each student, that is S1, S2 up to S50, and further dividing it by the number of the students, that is 50 over here. That will be the mean value over here in the case of the population. Same way you can calculate the mean for the sample itself. Let us take the case that out of these 50 students, I selected a sample of 10 students and further calculated the mean value. It will be represented by x bar in that particular case. Is that clear? Further, it is related to, in the case of population, whether we are considering it related to the mean or standard deviation, these are said to be what? These are said to be the parameters. These are said to be what? These are said to be the parameters related to the characteristics of the population, are basically said to be the parameters. Whereas in the case of we are considering the mean and standard deviation or standard error in the case of the sample, it is said to be statistics. Okay, so let me give an example related to it. First of all, we are considering it related to population. So for population, mean is represented as mu, and further in the case of a sample itself, it is represented by x bar. When we talk about the standard deviation, it is represented by sigma. It is represented as sigma in the case of population, and further for sample, it is represented by small s, or we simply write as a sigma x bar, Any of these can be used for this purpose. Is that clear? Further, for the population, we name these as, whether we are talking about the median or mean or standard deviation, we basically call them what? We call them parameters. Okay, we call them parameters of the population, and in the case of sample, we basically name them as statistics of the population. Itself, of the sample itself. Is that clear? That was related to the terminology that we use over there, because it will be quite helpful to you so as to understand when we'll be covering the numerical part, and further when we'll be covering the theoretical part too. Okay, now the question is that how we are going to select the sample out of the population. There are many ways which are over there by which we can select the sample out of the population. Now it's not an easier task, because whatsoever whatsoever the sample you will be selecting, that must be quite sufficient enough, and that must be covering each and every aspect related to population. Now, what is the main purpose of selecting the sample? Because we want to save our time as well as the cost related to it, and further we want to cover each and every aspect related to the population too. So if you are an electronic company and if you want to conduct a survey in the market, definitely you are basically quite sure you basically do want to cover each and every aspect related to market, that the sample must be representing the population itself. Okay, so that you must be accurate. So we basically are covering the different scenarios, and I'll just let you know that what is standard deviation and how you can find out the differences related to it. But before that, we'll be covering that what are the different types of the sampling, and further the sampling is divided, that the way of sampling is covered in two different categories. One it is a judgment sampling. We are basically now covering the type of sampling, and further what it is a judgment sampling, and it is basically what it is the non-random sampling. It is the judgment sampling, or also said to be the non-random sampling, where the person who is basically selecting the sample will be having a judgment related to the population itself, and based upon his perceptions, based upon his judgment, he will be selecting the entities out of the population itself. That is basically what that is a judgment sampling or non-random sampling. And the second one, it is a random sampling. Random sampling, where we'll be selecting the entities on a random basis. And in case of random sampling, each and every in general, if we say in case of random sampling, each and every entity will be having the equal chance of getting selected into the sample itself. But in the case of the judgment sampling, it will not be the same. Let me make you understand with an example. Let us say that there are 100 students, and further if you are having a judgment related to the students, in that case you will be just considering or focusing on some particular students itself. You will not be covering each and every 100 student now. Each and every of the 100 students, you will be basically considering and focusing only on a number of the students out of 100. But in case of random sampling, we will be selecting the students randomly. In that case particularly, each and every student will be having an equal chance so as to be selected in the sample itself. Is that clear? Is that particular part clear over here? Now, random sampling is further of 4 types. Random sampling is a further of 4 types. What are those 4 types? Let us have a look at it. What are those 4 types? Let us have a look at it. Now, over here we have the type related to the simple random sampling. First of all, it is related to the simple random sampling. It is simple random sampling. In that case, you'll be basically looking at each and every outcome that can be there, and then you'll be selecting out of those pairs. Okay, let us take the case that you are having the 4 students. And we want to pick 2 out of these. We are having 4 students named A, B, C, D, and we want to pick 2 out of these 4 students. And what would be the different events that can be there? I'll just say it as event, that what can be the different pairs related to 2 students. If I want to select 2 students, the 2 different pairs can be, the different combinations can be 4C2. How we can solve 4C2? It is basically equal to 4 factorial divided by 2 factorial. So how we can resolve, we can solve it at 4 into 3 into 2 factorial divided by 2 factorial into 2 factorial. So it will be 6 events can be there, 6 combinations can be there, and those combinations will be equal to AB, AC, AD, BC, BD, and further CD. These 6 combinations can be there, and if we want to select one combination out of it, what would be the probability related to it? Probability is basically equal to what? The outcomes, expected outcomes, that is over here 1, because we want to select only one pair of the students over here. So we want, either we'll be selecting AB, or we'll be selecting AC or AD, or BC, BD or CD. Okay, so that is basically one event only. And what is the total number of the events over there? There are 6 events. So that will be the probability related to selecting a pair out of 4 students. And what will be the probability related to selection of person A over here, or person B over here, person C over here, person D over here? Now look at the particular events over here. In this particular case, you will be analyzing that each and every student is appearing thrice in the combinations. Okay, so out of 6 events, each and every student is basically repeating thrice in the system itself. Likewise, if we look at the person A over here, that the combinations are AB, AC, AD. So what would be the probability of selection of person A? What would be the probability of selection of person A? Total events are 6, and further A is basically over there in 3 events, so it will be 3 by 6, so it will be 1 by 2 probability. So it will be 1 by 2 probability. So here we can just want to tell you that each and every person is having the equality related to be selected in the sample itself. That is said to be what? That is said to be the simple random sampling, where without any judgment, without any prior notice or related to the student itself or related to the sample itself, entities itself, we will be selecting our candidates, our sample without any biasness. Is that clear? That is a simple random sampling. Second type of the random sampling, it is a systematic sampling. It is a systematic sampling itself. Now what is systematic sampling? Now in this case also, you basically select the person randomly, but you will be following a system. You will be following what? You will be following a system. Let us take the case that we are having 100 of the students, 1 2 3 4 6 5 7 5 6 7 8 9 10 and up to 100 and further let us take the case that we selected each and every 8th student. We selected each and every 8th student. Likewise, we selected the student at number 8. First of all, we basically numbered the students, or basically allotted a number to the student, and further after that we selected what? We selected a student. Okay, we selected a particular student. In this case, we are assuming that we selected person each and every 8th student over here. As such, we selected 8th student, 16th student, 24th, 32nd student, and so on. Okay, so such that we basically selected each and every student as a multiple of 8 over here. Okay, now in this particular case, person up to 1 to 7, basically they never got a chance to be selected into the sample itself. Okay, so never, in that particular case also, they never got a chance that they will be selected into the sample itself, because we basically selected each and every 8th student over here. So that is related to what? We are following a system, but the limitation is related to that there is no equal chance that is given to that. That was basically over there in the case of the simple random sampling. Then why will not be going for the simple random sampling? Why will not be using the simple random sampling? Because when we consider the case of 4 students, the possible events were 6. Now let us take an example where we are having 1 lakh a number of the entities in the sample, where we are having 1 lakh entities in the sample itself. In that case, it could be very much costlier and time taking so as to get the particular outcomes. Okay, so that we basically do not go for the simple random sampling, where we are having a large number of the entities in the sample itself. Okay, third type of the sampling that we are going to cover, it is related to what? It is related to the stratified sampling or mixed sampling. Third type that we are going to cover over here, it is a stratified sampling. It is a stratified sampling, or we also name it as a mixed sampling over here. Now what are the stratas actually? Now let me give an example that if you're a gene manufacturing company, and if you want to get an idea that what would be your estimated sales this year, and you also know that your gene products are very much famous under the age groups of 16 to 35. Okay, now you basically divided each of the whole of the population into the different categories. Let us take the case that you basically categorize those as 1 to 15 years, then 16 to 30 years, 30 to 35 years, and 35 plus years. Okay, so that is the basically different categories you formed, and further you formed the different stratas. You basically formed the different stratas. You basically put up the each and every different age groups into the different groups over there. You basically made different groups related to that. That is related to what? Those are termed as stratas. Those are termed as stratas. Now if you look at these stratas particularly individually, you can basically locate as these individual entities over here in particular group. Those would be related to each other. Those will be having common characteristics. Okay, because we are considering related to different age groups over here. So their habits, their eating habits, their wearing habits, their fashion habits, all must be very much very much relatable to each other. Those must be very much relatable to each other. So we can say there are homogeneous. The internal or the groups are basically itself, the internal or the entities into the group, into the strata itself, they will be homogeneous in nature. If we are having 100 students or 4,000 people over here in age 1 to 15, and for the 40,000 over here in 35 plus, in that case we can consider that the entities present in particular strata, the characteristics would be homogeneous. The characteristics would be homogeneous. Okay, so now the population is divided into what? It is divided into different parts and further having different characteristics. Now each and every strata will be heterogeneous with each other. These will be heterogeneous to each other, because if we basically compare these two different stratas, those would be different from each other. But if we compare the different entities in one strata itself, those will be sharing common characteristics. Is that clear to you? Okay, so first of all, you do what? You basically form the different stratas, different groupings, and further you divided the people into different groups over there, and then you basically selected the different candidates out of the stratas itself. That type of sampling is said to be what? It is said to be stratified sampling. It is said to be the stratified sampling. Why stratified samplings? Because we formed different stratas. We formed the different stratas in this case. And the next type we are going to cover, it is over here, that is related to what? That is related to the cluster sampling. The fourth type that we are going to cover over here is cluster sampling. Now cluster sampling is totally opposite to that of the stratified sampling. Why it is opposite? Let us have a look at it. So let us take the case that the company took the map of the city and further divided into the different groupings. Now this is a G1, this is G2, or we can say cluster C1, C2, C3, C4 and so on. Okay. Now if we look at the particular cluster over here, now there will be different people residing over here in one cluster. Okay, we can basically take an example that if the city is divided into the different colonies or different mohallas over there, in that particular case, different category of the people with the different attributes and different characteristics will be residing over there. So we can say there is heterogeneity in the cluster itself. If we look at some particular cluster, there will be heterogeneity, that the characteristics are not similar, because each and every type of persons, each and every type of people is residing over there in singular in an individual cluster over there. But if we look at if we basically compare two different clusters, let us take the case if we are comparing cluster 1 with cluster 2, in that case there will not be that much deviation. The deviation will not be that much. Deviation means what? Deviation means differences between the characteristics or differences between the means would not be that much. That is related to what? But in the case of the stratified sampling, we basically considered that inside of particular strata there was homogeneous, those were homogeneous. Okay, but in case of clusters, the inside of the cluster we are having those are heterogeneous. Okay, so clusters basically are having the heterogeneity, but when we compare the different clusters, those are comparable. Okay, so that is related to what? That is related to cluster sampling over here. So these are the four types related to the random sampling. So we are having two types of sampling, that is judgment sampling or non-random sampling, and second one, it is related to the random sampling over here. Further we covered the four types: simple random sampling and systematic sampling. Third one, it was stratified sampling, and the fourth one, it is the cluster sampling over there. Is that clear over here? So kindly please do confirm at the earliest so that we could proceed. Kindly please do confirm at the earliest so that we could proceed. Now we will be learning the concept related to the sampling distribution. Now we will be covering the concept related to the sampling distribution. Now basically let us take the case that we are having this population where we are having 100 of the entities. We are having 100 of the entities, and first of all we will be selecting each and every possible sample out of it. We will be selecting each and every sample out of it. Let us take the case that if we were to select 10 persons or 10 entities in a sample itself, so we will be forming each and every sample which will be having 10 samples in between, and further we'll be basically covering each and every sample out of it. Let us take the same case where we were having 4 students A, B, C, D, and further we formed the 6 pairs, that those were AB, AC, AD, BC, BD, and CD. These were the 6 pairs, and further these were the total outcomes. Now we basically are having all the samples which could be formed out of the population itself. So sampling distribution is the distribution of all possible values of a statistic from all the possible samples. So first of all, we are having what? We are having all the possible samples, and further we will be having the values of statistics that is related to the, if we basically calculating the mean for the samples over here, that was basically represented by x bar. In the case of sample, that was represented by x bar, and further we calculated the standard deviation sigma x bar, or by it is represented by simple s. Okay, and further if we draw, and further it is related to what? It is related to the sampling distribution. When we will be drawing these samples, that the different samples or the total number of the samples that we drew from the population itself, when we'll be basically combining the effect of these samples on the graph itself, that is said to be what? That is said to be the sampling distribution. That is said to be what? That is said to be the sampling distribution. Is that clear? Okay, so any probability distribution can be partially described by its mean and standard deviation. Okay, so it can be basically partially described by its mean or standard deviation itself. So first process was, it was related to that we inferred each and every sample from the population itself, and further we are having the statistics related to these samples, and when we draw it on the graph itself, that is said to be what? That is said to be the sampling distribution itself. It is said to be the sampling distribution itself. So one, it is a population distribution. The other concept, it is a population distribution. When we basically are having a population, and further we basically having the related to the, we basically drew the graph over here. Let us say the case that this is a graph related to population, and here we are having the mean, and here we are having the mean. That is basically related to what? That is said to be what? Population distribution, where we basically drew the different parameters of the population itself, different parameters of the population itself. Okay, now let us look at the factor of the sampling error. Let us have a look at the sampling error over there. Now we are having the graph related to population distribution, and further when we basically infer the different samples out of it, and further we are having we drew it on the in the form of the graph itself. Let us say the case that in case of the sampling distribution, the graph goes like that. It is somewhat different from that of the population itself. It is somewhat different from that of the population itself. Now the difference between these two is known as what? It is said to be what? It is said to be the sampling error itself. It is said to be the sampling error itself. It is a variation, or we can say it is simply a what? It is simply said to be sampling error. So it is related to the sampling error. So it is a variation or the error among the sample statistics due to chance, because when we selected the different entities from the population itself, it may be the case that the one of the entity got the chance to be selected and the other entity never got the chance to be selected. That was why the error was there. So let me tell you that we are having the different samples over here which we selected, and further there was a difference from the mean itself. That is said to be what? This particular thing is said to be what? This is the error itself, or we can say this is the sampling error itself. Is that clear? Is this particular point related to the sampling error over here clear or not? So kindly please confirm so that I could proceed, or I should be repeating it again. Kindly please do let me know at the earliest. So I'll be repeating it again. I will be definitely be repeating it again. So let me tell you again. So let me give you the same example related to the fact that if we are having the 4 students, let us name them A, B, C, D. And further we made the different pairs out of these. We were having the 6 pairs. Now we were to select 2 pairs. We were to select only and only 2 pairs or 1 pair. We were to select only 1 pair out of the population. There were 6 pair combinations and we were to select only 1 pair. Now if we selected the pair CD, let us say the case we selected the pair CD, in that particular case the other pairs never got a chance that they will be got selected. Now when we will be considering the statistics of this sample, if we consider the statistics of this sample, statistics means what? If we consider the mean or the if we look at the standard deviation, in that particular case that would be somewhat different from the population's parameters. Those will be different from the population parameters. Why those will be different? Because it is basically what? It is the sample statistics reduced to chance. It is a sample statistics reduced to chance, because the each and every sample is not covering each and every event over there. No? It is basically a chance that we selected a few entities out of the population. That is why the difference will be there. If we say the population of the mean, if we say the population of the if the mean of the population was 17 over here, let us take the case that the population mean was 17 over here, and when we selected the entities when we selected the entities out of it, the mean comes out to be over here. We said mu, that is the population mean, comes out to be 17, and further when we selected the sample out of it, the mean comes out to be, the x bar comes out to be let us take the case 15.6. Now it is basically somewhat different from that. What? It is somewhat different from the population parameters. The statistics are different from the population parameters. This is what? This is due to what? This is due to the fact that there were no equal chances given to the each and every entity over there, because we never selected each and every entity out of the population. Na? There were a few entities which were selected for the sampling purposes. That is why the error is there. That is why this error is there, and that is said to be what? That is said to be the sampling error. I hope that this would be clear now. Do confirm the same so that we could proceed. Kindly please do confirm the same so that we could proceed. Now we will be solving a question based upon that. So kindly please do confirm the same if you have understood the concept so that we could proceed. And let me tell you, and the another topic that we are going to cover over here, let me tell you, that is related to what? That is related to sample distribution itself. So if the distribution is normal, what do you mean by distribution is normal? That if it is symmetric around the mean, if the population is distributed symmetrically around the mean, that is said to be what? That is said to be normal population. In that case, it is said to be the normal population. If the population is normal population, in that case, what is basically the inference? The inferences are quite simple. Let me tell you what are those. So what is basically normal population? What is the case of normal population? When the curve of the population is symmetric around the mean, it is said to be normal population. It is said to be normal population. And if the population is normally distributed, in that case, the mean of the population is equal to what? It is equal to the mean of the sample itself. And second inference, it is related to that the standard deviation or standard error of the sample is equal to, standard deviation of the population divided by under root of n, that is the number of entities in the sample itself. N is basically what? N is related to the number of entities into the sample. So here we can basically infer where the population is normally distributed, that is, it is symmetric around the mean. In that case, the mean of the population is equal to the mean of the sample itself. And second inference, it is related to that the standard deviation of the sample itself is equal to the standard deviation of the population divided by the under root of n, where small n is basically related to what? Number of entities into the sample itself. Where capital N is related to what? Capital N is basically related to the parameter, that is number of entities in the population, or number of entities in the population itself, that is represented by capital N in the case of the parameters. And for statistics, the number of entities, it is represented by small n over here. So this is how we can basically infer related if the population is normally distributed. And further, you also need to memorize one particular part over here that is related to the Z value. That we'll be using for solving the numericals over here. So in that case, Z value is equal to x bar minus mu divided by sigma x bar. So this is related to what? This is related to the Z value over here. You need to memorize this formula over here. That is Z is equal to x bar minus mu divided by sigma x bar. Now, how to use this in the numericals itself? So we will be considering that. Okay. So there is a question related to that. So they will be covering a question related to that. So if we say a bank calculates that the individual saving accounts are normally distributed. So bank says that the individual accounts are what? individual accounts are normally distributed. First thing is given to be that the population is what? It is normally distributed, and further it is said that the mean of the population is given to be, the mean of the population, that is the mu, is given to be 2000, and further the standard deviation, that is a sigma, is given to be 600. The standard deviation is given to be 600. And if the bank takes a random sample, if banks takes a random sample of 100 accounts over there, what is the probability that the sample mean will lie between 1900 to 2050? So we need to calculate the probability related to what? That the sample mean, that the x bar will be lying between the 1900 to 2050 over here. It will be lying between the 1950 and 1900 to 2050 over here. We need to calculate the probability related to the same. So how we can solve this particular question? Let me tell you that how we can solve this particular question over here. So first of all, we need to calculate the z values over here for x bar is equal to 1900 and x bar is equal to 2050 over here. Okay, now over here, first of all, we need to calculate the sigma x bar, and if it is said over here that the population is normally distributed, what does it indicate? It indicates that the x bar is equal to mu, and further the second case, it is equal to what? It is a case that the sigma x bar is equal to the sigma divided by what? Under root of n. And we can calculate the sigma x bar over here, that sigma is given to be 600, and for the under root of n is equal to 100, so 100 under root, that is equal to 600 divided by 10, and further it is equal to 60 over here. So sigma x bar comes out to be what? Sigma x bar comes out to be 60 in this particular case. Is that clear? How did we calculate it? Because it is given that it is normally distributed, so we basically infer that sigma x bar is equal to sigma divided by under root n. And over here, that is the sample size is given to be 100 over here, and sigma is already given, that is the standard deviation of the population is given to be 600. So it will be equal to sigma x bar, that is equal to sigma divided by under root n. So it will be 600 divided by under root of 100. So we basically just solved it, and it comes out to be 60 in this particular case. Is that clear? So sigma x bar is equal to 60. I'm just writing it over here because it was not somewhat clear over here. Okay, is that clear? Now we'll be looking at the z value. What is the formula related to z value? Kindly please do confirm at the same. Kindly please do confirm at the same. What is the formula related to the z value over here? So the z value formula is related to what? It is x bar minus mu and further divided by sigma x bar, because we are basically considering the value. We want to calculate the z value related to that what will the probability that x bar value will be between 1900 and 2050 over here. So we can simply solve it by using the formula z is equal to what? It is equal to x bar minus mu and divided by by the sigma x bar. This is a formula related to z over here, and that is how we can solve the z value for the 1900 x bar and 2050 x bar. Okay, so we will be simply putting the value over here. So it is a z value that we are going to calculate, that is if the value is in between 1900 and 2050. So for that, not actually, it is when it is said to be in between, it will not be inclusive of the values over here. So it is z basically residing between 1900 and 2050 over here, and we will be solving that particular thing. We will be solving this particular thing. So it will be x bar. So it is x bar is 1900 for the first case minus the mu. Mu is basically 2000 over here. So it will be 2000, and sigma x bar we calculated, it is 60. And also for the second case, x bar is equal to 2050 minus 2000 and further divided by 60 over here. Further divided by 60 over here. Okay. Now we'll be solving this. So it comes out to be 100 divided by 60, or we can say minus 100 divided by 60, and further the z value over here lies between 50 divided by 60. 50 divided by 60. So it is 100 divided by 60. It comes out to be what? So if we consider 100 divided by 60, it comes out to be 1.67. So it is 1 minus 1.67, and z value is lying between 50 divided by 60. So 50 divided by 60, that is equal to what? That is equal to 0.833. That comes out to be what? That comes out to be, sorry, it is 100 divided by 60 in this particular case, and further it is 0.833. So it is minus 1.67, and further it is lying between z to 0.833. So in the question paper itself, the value of the Z table will be provided to you. So I'm writing it as it is from the Z table itself. So over here, the value we need to calculate related to 1.67. We need to get the value from the Z table, which will be given to you. So the value of the Z table will be given to you in the question itself. So it is 0.4525. It is 0.4525 itself for the Z value. Will not be considering the minus sign. When will you be basically writing the Z table value? You'll not be considering the minus sign over here. So it is 0.4525 for the 1.67, and for 0.833 it is 0.2967. It is 0.2967 for the 0.833. For the 0.833 it is 0.2967. So further we will be just adding them up, because if we look at this graphically, if I just represent it graphically, so it will be somewhat like, that you are having the value like this one, and this was the probability distribution, and further over here we look at the mean. It is 2000 in this particular case. It is 2000 in this particular case, and further we need to calculate the values, where the value is lying between 1900 over here, 1900 over here, and further 2050 over here, and further 2050 over here. So we want to get all the values which are in between. We want to get the probability of all the values in between. So this is the region that we need to calculate. This is the region that we need to calculate. So we can write Z value over here, that is lying between basically minus 1.67 to 0.833, and further this is the region that we need to calculate. So we will be doing what? We'll be covering the value above it and further the value below it. So we'll be basically adding them up, because we want to get the values in between over here. So we will be adding them up over here. So it will be related to what? It will be the 0.4525 plus 0.2967. We will be adding them up. That will basically forming the probability. That is a 0.2967. That is a 0.2967 plus 0.4525, and the total value comes out to be 0.7492. So that is the probability. So that would be the answer related to it. So 0.7492 would be the answer related to it. Okay. So let me explain to you again that how we did just solve this question. So it was given in the question that it is normally distributed. The population was normally distributed, and further we were provided with the different parameters over there related to the mu of the population, and standard deviation were given, and sampling number was given to be 100 over here. From here we calculated the value of the sigma x bar. Further we wanted to calculate the probability of the x bar, that the sample mean it will be lying between 1900 to 2050 over here. That it will be lying between 2050 and 1900 over here. Are you getting my point now? So we were basically looking at the factor that if we select 100 people out of the population, what would be the probability that the mean of the sample will be lying between the value 1900 to 2050? That was the question related to it. And what is the criteria that how we can solve it? We were to basically consider the Z values for these mean values. Okay, so we just calculated the Z values, and further using the Z table over here we basically looked into the different values, and further we solved the Z value over here. Why we added up these value over here? Why we added up? Because we wanted to capture the in-between region. So we will be doing what? So we will be adding them up over here. Is that clear? Because you want to get the upper region and you want to get the lower region of 2050. So you'll be doing what? You'll be adding the values over here, and further this particular point would be clear when we will be solving the questions overall. So in the next video, in tomorrow's video, we'll be solving the questions related to that. So that will make the concepts much more clearer to you related to that. Is that clear? So that would be all related to this video. So kindly please do confirm that if you have understood the concepts related to it. So over here Nitul Davadra has said that he has not understood the last step over here. Sir, kindly please look at the factor. I just draw the graph over here. That is normally distributed. And further, if we let me just erase it over here first of all, so that I can make you understand well. Okay. Z table value will be given, so do not worry about it. It will be provided to you, so do not worry about it. So over here we were having the graph which is normally distributed, and further it was normally distributed, and the mean value was given to be 2000. If I'm not wrong, it was given to be 2000. Okay, now we were to calculate the value of the we were to calculate the probability that what would be the probability that the sample mean value will be lying between the 2050 and further the 1900 and further the 1900. Now if we look at the table over here, the value related to this particular point, that comes out to be what? That was actually if we look at the Z table, actually what was the value related to this particular point? What was the value related to this particular point? Let me check the Z table again. So it was for the 1.67, that was for the 1900 value 1.67. It was, the value was given to be, and thus for the 2050 it was 0.833. If I'm not wrong, kindly please correct me if I'm not wrong. So for 1.67 we just brought the Z value to be 0.4525, and for the 0.833 we brought the value to be 0.2967. 0.2967, and further we want to capture the region in between. We want to capture the region in between. That is why we'll be adding them up. That is why we will be adding them up. When we'll be solving the next questions related to that, now you'll get to know that what would be the criteria when we'll basically comparing this particular question with the next question. You'll be getting to know about it. Okay, so do not worry about this concept. I'll just explain to you in detail over there again so that you can understand it well. Okay, so that would be all. Thank you so much, and see you again in the next video.